I lent her my savings, she sold my house. That's the line I still hear echoing in my head whenever I think of her. Not her laughter, not the sound of her heels clicking on my kitchen floor, not even her voice calling me sister. Just that quiet sentence I whispered to myself the morning the truth came out. I lent her my savings, she sold my house. It began in the smallest, kindest corner of my heart, the place that believed in loyalty, in sisterhood, in second chances. Her name was Lena, and for most of my adult life, she was my other half, the friend who sat next to me through my divorce, the one who knew how I liked my coffee, the one who always said, "If you ever fall, I'll catch you." We met 20 years ago at a local community center, both of us young single mothers trying to rebuild our lives. I was working part-time at a bakery back then, and she was a hairdresser renting a small booth nearby. Somehow, between the smell of fresh bread and the sound of blow dryers, a friendship formed. She was the wild one, loud, funny, impulsive, while I was the calm and careful one. We balanced each other. She'd drag me to karaoke nights, I'd remind her to file her taxes. She'd say, "You think too much, May," and I'd laugh, "And you don't think at all." Back then, my life was simple. My son, Eli, was finishing high school. I'd finally paid off the small house my late mother left me, a modest, 2-bedroom cottage with faded blue shutters and a lemon tree in the yard. That house was my peace. Every morning, I'd brew coffee, open the curtains, and feel grateful for the sunlight that fell across my kitchen table. And Lena, well, she was part of that peace too. She'd come over every other Sunday for breakfast. We'd talk about everything, her new clients, my son's future, our hopes for retirement. She'd always say, "When we're old, we'll sit on your porch and gossip about the neighbors." And I'd smile. I believed her. For years, I never imagined a day would come when I'd wish I'd never opened my door to her. It started during a winter that felt colder than usual. My bakery job had been cut down to fewer hours, and bills were piling up. Eli had just started college, and even with his scholarship, there were expenses that kept coming. I remember sitting at my kitchen table late one night, staring at my checkbook, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest, that mix of worry and fatigue that comes when you're trying to make ends meet. That's when Lena called. "May," she said, her voice trembling. "I need your help. Please don't hang up." She sounded desperate. She told me her salon partner had taken off with their joint savings. Rent was due, clients were canceling, and she was about to lose everything. I remember pressing the phone tighter to my ear. "Oh, Lena." She cried, really cried, and it broke something inside me. I told her to come over. Within 20 minutes, she was on my porch, coat half-zipped, mascara smudged, shaking. She sat at my kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared so many peaceful breakfasts, and said, "I don't know what to do, May. You're the only person I can trust." Trust. That word carries a weight I didn't understand until it was too late. She told me she needed a small loan, just enough to keep the salon open a few more months. I didn't have much, but I did have my savings, the one account I'd been building for Eli's future. I hesitated. She reached across the table, took my hands, and whispered, "I swear on my mother's grave, May. I'll pay you back before summer. You know me." And I did know her, or thought I did. That night, I withdrew most of my savings. I told myself it was temporary, that helping her was the right thing to do. It felt good to be needed, to be trusted back. When I handed her the envelope, she cried again, only this time, they were tears of relief. She hugged me so tightly that my ribs hurt. "You saved me," she said. And I believed that, too. For weeks after that, she seemed back to her old self, cheerful, busy, grateful. She even insisted on paying for groceries sometimes. But then, she started talking about business opportunities. A second salon, new investments, property deals. She'd say, "May, you need to think bigger. You're sitting on a gold mine, you know." I'd laugh, thinking she was just exaggerating as always. But soon, her tone changed. She started bringing up documents, collateral, and security. One afternoon, she came over with papers. She said they were just a formality to protect both of us, something to make my loan look legitimate in case of taxes. I didn't understand much about legal things. She'd always been the competent one, the talker, the one who handled contracts and numbers with ease. She flipped through the pages quickly, pointing with her manicured nails. See? It just says that if something happens, you can claim part of my business. It's protection for you, May. I remember hesitating, that flicker of doubt, that whisper in my chest. But she smiled so warmly, and I signed. I can still hear the faint scratch of the pen across paper, the sound of trust being rewritten into something else. At that moment, I had no idea what I'd actually signed. And no idea that within a few months, my little blue-shuttered house, the one with the lemon tree, the laughter, the years of quiet, would no longer belong to me. The first clue came in something as ordinary as a letter. A plain white envelope, stamped and folded neatly, sitting in my mailbox one Tuesday morning. I almost tossed it aside with the rest of the bills, but my name caught my eye, written in a handwriting that wasn't quite familiar. When I opened it, my breath caught. It was from a real estate agency downtown, confirming receipt of ownership documents for a property listed under my address. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I laughed, even. They must have sent it to the wrong person, I murmured to myself. But that laugh, it didn't feel right. It came out shaky, nervous. I called the number listed at the bottom of the letter. A polite young man answered. "Ma'am, can I have your property reference number?" he asked. When I read it aloud, there was a pause, a long, uncomfortable pause. Then he said, "Oh. Mrs. May, you're listed as the former owner of the property. It was transferred last month." My hand went cold. "Former?" I whispered. "That's impossible." He double-checked. "It says here, ownership transfer completed on March 5th. March 5th. I remember that day. Lena and I had gone out for coffee. She'd made a big deal about treating me, said she wanted to celebrate new beginnings. I remember her smile that day, how it didn't quite reach her eyes. I hung up without another word. The kitchen seemed to tilt around me. I picked up my phone, scrolled to her name, and pressed call. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. By evening, I'd called her 6 times. No reply. Just that same cheerful voicemail recording, "Hey, it's Lena. Leave me some love." But there was no love left in me that night. Only confusion. I barely slept. The next morning, I drove to her salon, a place that had always been alive with chatter and music. But that day, the windows were dark. A handwritten sign hung on the glass. Closed for renovation. I stood there, staring at the reflection of my own face in that glass, tired, hollow, unfamiliar. Something inside me whispered, "You've been played." For days, I tried to convince myself otherwise. Maybe she'd just forgotten to tell me something. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, some legal mix-up. But the silence stretched on. Then, one afternoon, I saw her. At a cafe near downtown, laughing with a man in a sharp gray suit. She was wearing new clothes, her nails freshly done, her hair styled. I froze. She hadn't seen me. I remember watching them from across the street, my hands trembling around a paper cup of coffee. The man leaned in close, slid a folder across the table, and she signed something with that same confident hand I'd once trusted. And then she laughed. That sound, bright, carefree, cut through me like glass. When she finally looked up, our eyes met. For a brief second, her smile faltered. Then she whispered something to the man, stood up, and walked toward me. "May," she said, her voice bright, rehearsed. "Oh my God, it's been ages." I just stared at her. "Ages?" I said quietly. "You've been ignoring me for weeks." She glanced at the man, then back at me. "I've been busy." You know how business is. Business, I repeated. My heart pounded. Lena, did you sell my house? Her smile froze. Then she laughed, that fake, high-pitched laugh she used when she was cornered. May, what are you talking about? Why would I do that? I pulled the letter from my purse and handed it to her. This came in the mail. It says you filed ownership transfer. She scanned it, her eyes darting left and right. Then she sighed, placing a hand over mine. May, this must look bad, I know. But I did it for you. For me? She nodded earnestly. Remember the papers you signed? You authorized me to handle property matters while we secured that loan for the salon. I just needed to use the house as temporary collateral, to show the bank you had assets. Her voice was so calm, so confident, that for a moment, I almost believed her again. Almost. But why didn't you tell me? I whispered. She sighed. I didn't want you to panic. I was going to fix it as soon as the deal went through. You'll get your deed back, I promise. The man behind her stood up, adjusting his tie. Is everything all right here? He asked, eyes cold. Lena smiled, squeezing my hand. Everything's fine, just a misunderstanding. And before I could respond, she was gone, slipping into the man's car, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with that letter fluttering in my hand. That night, I sat in my empty kitchen, staring at the lemon tree outside my window. The moonlight made everything look ghostly pale. For the first time, I realized my name might no longer be on that land. The next morning, I went to the county office. The clerk looked through the records and frowned. Yes, ma'am. The property was sold on April 2nd. Sold? My voice came out as a whisper. She turned the monitor toward me. There it was, in black and white. Buyer, Joshua Reeves. Seller, Lena Hart. And under previous owner, my name. My hand shook as I pressed my fingers against the screen, tracing the letters. It felt like touching a gravestone. Who's Joshua Reeves? I asked. The clerk shrugged. Real estate investor, I think. Bought 3 other homes recently. All cash. I couldn't breathe. My home, the walls that had held my son's laughter, my mother's furniture, my memories, was gone. And the person who'd taken it, was the one I'd called family. That night, I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd signed those papers, and stared at the empty chair across from me. Lena's chair. There was still a faint lipstick mark on the rim of the mug she'd used that day. That's when the first tear fell. Because I realized. I hadn't just lost a house. I'd lost the illusion that kindness always protects you. I always thought betrayal would feel like a slap, sudden, sharp, unforgettable. But the truth? It crept in quietly. Like a chill seeping under the door. In the days after I found out, I moved through the world like a ghost, walking, talking, breathing, but not really living. I still woke up at dawn, still made coffee, still fed the stray cat that came by my porch. Except it wasn't really my porch anymore. I started digging, calling the county office, banks, anyone who might tell me what had really happened. Everywhere I turned, Lena's name was there. She'd used a power of attorney document, the same one she'd told me was just protection, to transfer my house into her own name. And 2 weeks later, she sold it for cash. When I realized what that meant, I sat on the kitchen floor and laughed. A small, broken laugh that turned into sobbing. All I could think was, I signed my own home away. I remembered her hands guiding mine across the paper. The smell of her perfume, vanilla and jasmine. The way she'd said, it's just a formality. How easily I'd believed her. A week later, I finally got a hold of her. I didn't call this time, I went straight to her apartment. The hallway smelled like bleach and cigarettes. Her door was half open. I could hear music playing inside, something upbeat, something careless. I stepped in. She was there, in a new silk robe, glass of wine in hand, her hair done up like she had no worries in the world. When she saw me, she froze. "May," she said softly. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" My voice cracked. "You sold my house, Lena." She sighed and turned away, setting her glass down on the counter. "I told you, May, it was temporary. You'll get the money. I just needed a quick sale to get the investors on board. You'll be repaid tenfold." "Repaid?" I whispered. "You stole my home." She turned sharply. "I didn't steal anything. You signed the papers. You trusted me." Those words hit harder than any slap. You trusted me. Like it was my fault for believing her. "I trusted you because you were my best friend," I said. "Because you sat at my table, held my hand, cried with me." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Don't make this dramatic. You'll get your cut, May. I told you. You should be thanking me, that old house was a burden." "A burden?" My throat closed up. That burden was my mother's. She died in that house. My son grew up there. She looked at me like I was a child. "You're too sentimental. This is business." Something inside me snapped then, not anger, but a kind of clear, cold understanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was who she really was. "You used me," I said quietly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "May, you were the safest bet I ever made." I took a step back. For a moment, I thought about slapping her, screaming, something, but that wasn't me. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a small recorder, and pressed play. Her own words, "You signed it, May. You trusted me," echoed through the room. Her face went pale. "You recorded me?" "Yes," I said. "And I'll take this to the police." She laughed, but it wavered. "You can't prove anything." I met her eyes. "Maybe not today. But I will." I walked out of her apartment without looking back. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like power. Small, fragile, but mine. That night, I went through every drawer, every file, every email related to the house. And the more I found, the sicker I felt. She hadn't just sold my home, she'd forged additional documents, changed mailing addresses, rerouted the sale confirmation to her email. Every move, every step, calculated. And then I found something else. A printed email thread between her and a man named Joshua Reeves, the buyer. Property cleared. Deed transfer complete. Funds received. Appreciate the quick turnaround, Lena. Hope your friend doesn't come knocking. Don't worry. She trusts me completely. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the paper. That was the moment the grief burned away, replaced by something sharper. Resolve. She'd stolen from me, yes. But she'd underestimated me too. The next morning, I walked into a lawyer's office. A quiet, gray-haired man named Mr. Grayson. I laid everything on his desk, the documents, the emails, the recording. He read silently, his brow furrowing deeper with every page. When he finally looked up, he said, "Mrs. Harris, what your friend did constitutes fraudulent conveyance. You may have a case." "May?" I asked. He nodded. "It won't be easy. She used your signature, that complicates things. But with the recording and correspondence, we can file a civil suit. Possibly criminal, if we prove intent." For the first time in months, I exhaled. I don't care how long it takes. I just want my house back. He nodded. Then we'll fight for it. Filing that case was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every step of it felt like tearing open an old wound, seeing my name next to hers in legal papers, reading the words plaintiff and defendant. But I did it. And when the summons was finally served, I imagined the look on her face when the envelope reached her hands. Later that week, she called me, her voice suddenly sweet again. "May, please, let's talk," she pleaded. "We can work this out without courts. You're ruining both of us." I stayed silent. "May," she whispered. "Don't do this." "I'm not the one who started it," I said, and hung up. The trial date was set for early fall. By then, I'd moved into a small apartment, just a single room with thin walls and a view of the parking lot. Every night, I'd look at the photo of my old house, the lemon tree glowing under the sunset, and whisper, "I'll come home soon." But deep down, I knew this was no longer just about a house. It was about truth, about proving that no matter how deeply you're betrayed, you can stand again. And maybe, someday, even forgive. But not yet. Not yet. The courthouse smelled like paper and nerves. Old air, recycled through years of heartbreak. I sat on the wooden bench outside the courtroom, clutching a folder of evidence so tight that the edges bit into my palms. Across the hallway, Lena was laughing with her lawyer. She wore a white suit, sleek and expensive. Her hair was perfect, her lipstick bold. She looked like the kind of woman who'd never done a wrong thing in her life. I almost didn't recognize her anymore. Not the woman who once braided my hair on lazy Sundays, who cried over heartbreaks, who called me sister. That woman was gone, replaced by someone polished, sharp, and cold. When she noticed me, she smiled faintly. "You ready for your big show, May?" I didn't reply. She leaned closer. "You'll lose, you know. You signed everything. The court won't care about your sob story." I looked straight into her eyes. "We'll see." When the hearing began, my lawyer, Mr. Grayson, spoke calmly but firmly. He presented every document, each signature, each email, each deceit. He played the recording of her voice saying, "You signed it, May. You trusted me." The courtroom fell silent when that line echoed through the speakers. Lena's lawyer objected, of course. Claimed it was taken out of context. But context didn't change the truth. When it was my turn to speak, my hands trembled as I took the stand. The microphone felt too close, the air too heavy. But once I started, the words came out, slow, steady, honest. "I didn't lose my home because I was careless," I said. "I lost it because I trusted someone I loved. I believed her when she said she'd protect me. I believed her because, for 20 years, she was my family." My voice wavered, but I didn't stop. "She told me those papers were just for tax purposes. I didn't have much education, but I've always had faith in people. Maybe that was my mistake." Lena rolled her eyes, but I caught the flicker in her jaw, that small twitch people get when their mask starts to crack. I continued, quieter now. "When she took my house, she didn't just take walls and bricks. She took my mother's memories, my son's laughter, my peace. And I'm here to get it back, not just the property, but my dignity." The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, looked at me for a long time before saying, "Thank you, Mrs. Harris." When I stepped down, I could finally breathe again. Days turned into weeks. The court process dragged, hearings postponed, documents reviewed, witnesses called. But slowly, piece by piece, the truth built itself into something undeniable. A handwriting expert confirmed Lena had altered several lines on the power of attorney form. An accountant testified that the funds from the house sale had been wired into her personal account, not a business one. And then came the most unexpected witness of all, Joshua Reeves, the man who'd bought my house. He took the stand nervously, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I thought she was the rightful owner. She said her friend gave her the property as part of an investment deal. When I found out about the lawsuit, I went through the old emails, and it didn't feel right." He handed over printed correspondence showing Lena bragging about her friend being too naive to read contracts. Her lawyer tried to dismiss it, but the damage was done. You could feel the room shifting, sympathy tilting away from her, truth gathering on my side. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, listening to the rain against the window. Mr. Grayson had called to say the judge might order an injunction to freeze the sale proceeds and prevent Lena from spending any more of the money. It wasn't victory yet, but it was hope. And after months of despair, hope felt like oxygen. I closed my eyes and pictured the house, not the empty building it had become, but how it used to be. Eli running through the hallways. My mother's laughter echoing from the kitchen. The smell of lemon blossoms drifting through the window. For the first time, I let myself believe I might walk through that doorway again someday. A few days later, Lena showed up at my apartment. It was late, nearly midnight. I opened the door to find her standing there in the rain, mascara smudged, coat unbuttoned. "May, please," she said, her voice shaking. "Can we talk?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door. The other part, the one that still remembered our friendship, couldn't. She stepped inside, dripping water onto the carpet. "I can't do this anymore," she said, sinking onto the couch. "The court, the money, it's all falling apart. I'll lose everything." I stayed standing. "You already lost me." She looked up, eyes red. "I made a mistake. I thought I could fix it. You have to understand, I was desperate. The salon was failing, my debts were piling up. I didn't mean to hurt you." I shook my head. "You didn't just hurt me, Lena. You destroyed everything I built." She reached for my hand. "May, please. Drop the case. I'll make it right. I'll pay you back. I swear." I pulled my hand away. "You swore before." For a long moment, she just sat there, crying softly. And I felt something unexpected, not anger, not pity. Just sorrow. For what we'd lost. For who she could have been. Finally, I said, "You need to leave. Let the court decide what's right." She looked at me, eyes pleading. "May, you're not like me. You forgive everyone." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But forgiving you doesn't mean protecting you from the truth." She stood up slowly, her face collapsing into something small and tired. Then she whispered, "You really were the best friend I ever had." And just like that, she was gone. When the verdict finally came weeks later, I was back in that same courtroom. The judge's voice was steady, almost emotionless as she read the ruling. "This court finds the property transfer was obtained through fraudulent misrepresentation and undue influence. Title shall be restored to the plaintiff, May Harris. The defendant, Lena Hart, is ordered to pay restitution and legal costs." I didn't hear the rest. My ears rang with the only word that mattered, restored. My knees went weak. Mr. Grayson caught my arm. "It's over," he whispered. "You won." I looked across the room. Lena sat motionless, her expression unreadable, pride gone, charm gone, just emptiness. And for a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. That night, I drove back to my old house. It was empty, of course, stripped of furniture, the walls bare. But when I stepped inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon blossoms again. I walked room to room, touching the walls, the door frames, whispering, "I'm home." And in that silence, I realized something profound. I hadn't just reclaimed my house. I'd reclaimed myself. Word travels fast in small towns. By the next morning, everyone knew. Lena Hart, the woman who once ran the busiest salon on Main Street, who smiled in every church photo, who spoke about integrity and sisterhood, was now the woman who stole her best friend's home. Her name was on every tongue, whispered between checkout aisles, muttered behind coffee counters. She really did that to May? After everything that woman did for her? I always said she was too slick to be honest. I didn't have to say a word. The truth was doing the talking for me. At first, I thought it would feel good, justice, finally. But watching someone you once loved unravel in public, it's not satisfying. It's sad. Like seeing a tree you planted yourself split down the middle. A week after the verdict, I passed by her old salon. The for lease sign hung crooked in the window. The mirrors inside were gone, the chairs stacked in a corner. It looked nothing like the place where we used to dream together. I stood there for a moment, remembering late nights when we'd plan new hairstyles, new color palettes, talk about how our business would one day expand. It wasn't supposed to end like this. A few days later, I ran into her mother at the grocery store. Mrs. Hart, kind woman, quiet voice, always polite. When she saw me, her eyes welled up. "I'm so sorry, May," she said, clutching her purse. "I don't know what's gotten into her. She wasn't raised like that." I put a hand on her arm. "It's not your fault. We all make our own choices." She nodded slowly. "She lost more than your friendship, you know. Her fiancé called off the engagement. Said he couldn't marry someone who lies for a living." The words sank deep. Lena hadn't just lost money or property, she'd lost her image. Her entire identity built on success and perfection had cracked in full view of everyone. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. Eli and I spent weekends repainting the house. He laughed when I picked the same color as before, pale blue. "Guess you're sentimental, huh, Mom?" "Maybe," I smiled. "But some things deserve to come back the way they were." Neighbors brought over casseroles and old photo albums. People I hadn't spoken to in years showed up just to say, "We're proud of you, May." And for once, I didn't shrink under the attention. I let their kindness sink in. Because after losing everything, I'd learned, accepting love doesn't make you weak. It reminds you you're still worthy of it. One evening, as I was watering the garden, a car pulled into my driveway. It was Lena. She stepped out slowly, no fancy clothes, no makeup, no mask. Just jeans, a wrinkled shirt, and eyes that looked years older. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said softly. "But I needed to see it, your house." I didn't answer. I just stood there, holding the hose, letting the water hit the soil. She looked around, the porch, the flowers, the windows, then back at me. "I thought if I had everything you had, I'd finally feel enough," she whispered. Turns out, all I did was lose everything that mattered. There was no arrogance in her voice anymore. Just exhaustion. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I just wanted to say, you didn't deserve any of it. And I'm sorry." I let out a long breath. The sound of water filled the silence between us. "Lena," I said finally, "I forgave you a long time ago. Not for you, for me. I couldn't carry that hate anymore." Tears slid down her cheeks. "You're still the better woman." I shook my head. "No. I'm just the one who learned the hard way that love without boundaries becomes self-destruction." She gave a small nod, turned, and walked away, her shoulders hunched like she was carrying years of regret. I watched until her car disappeared down the road. And just like that, the chapter closed, quietly, finally. A few months later, I hosted a small gathering at my home, family, neighbors, friends. There was laughter again, music, warmth. As the sun dipped low, Eli stood up with a toast. "To Mom," he said, his voice steady. "For teaching me that no matter who betrays you, you can still choose grace." The crowd clapped softly. My throat tightened. I looked around that room, at faces full of light and love, and realized something I wish I'd known sooner. Sometimes, justice isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. Not of what you lost, but of who you are. Later that night, when everyone left, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The moonlight spilled across the old wooden floorboards. And in the reflection of the glass, I could almost see my mother smiling back. She used to tell me, "Truth takes its time, baby. But when it arrives, it sets you free." She was right. Because I wasn't the same woman who once signed those papers in blind trust. I was stronger, wiser, and maybe a little scarred, but whole. And in a world that often rewards deceit, I'd learned that honesty, quiet, steady honesty, is its own kind of revenge. Fade out. If this story found you tonight, Maybe it's because someone tried to take what was yours too. Remember, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over poison. If you liked this story, the full version is on the channel, go watch it there.